They say I'm different cause I'm a piece of sugar cane. Sweet to the core, that's right, I got a rhythm. My great-grandma didn't like the foxtrot. Now instead she spit it's nothing boogie tram on train. Spit on! They say I'm different cause I eat chitlins. And I can't help it, I was born and raised on them. That's right, every morning after slop the hogs and maybe getting off humping the jolly.
Good morning, evening, or afternoon, whenever you're listening to this, whatever time of day.
Whatever it may be, yeah.
Right? It is January 3rd, 2021. We did it. Welcome.
January 3rd?
No, February 3rd. Oh my God.
Yeah.
See? Yeah, you know what? Let's do this whole thing again.
This went by real fast. No, I think we should leave it in.
Okay.
That's how fast it's moving.
All right. It's February 3rd, 2021. Welcome to the Black Man's Book Club. How you doing, man?
Yes, welcome. I'm good. I hope everybody's out there just going with the speed of thought.
Ooh, the speed of thought.
Moving through this year, we got a lot to do, man, in our lives, in our families, in our nation, in our world, in our spirits. It's like it's time to get it on.
It's time for a fight.
Yeah.
It's time for a fight, whatever that means to you. I don't need people going out there punching other people. However,
no,
it's time that we collectively, figure this.
Let's see if I can come up with another thought. I think I know what you mean, man. Because well, first of all, it's good to see you.
Yes.
And when you say fight, you're talking about battle.
Yes.
Struggle. It means, building something, creating something,
right.
Making something. That's what you mean, right?
Yes, definitely. Because, just because the guy that you want is in office now doesn't mean that it's time to stop fighting. In fact, this is time for you to start fighting because a lot of people feel that it's all gone back to normal. And I don't see it yet.
Neither do I. As a matter of fact, the guy in office now, the president, the president. Yeah.
Oh, the president.
The president. Yeah. As we say, the president is in the office, not the former president, which I still hear a lot of people saying, President Trump. Nah, that chapter's over. We got other stuff to do, but, he is the former president, unfortunately.
No,
but the president is President Joe Biden.
I have a question about that.
What's that?
So if someone's no longer the president, are we supposed to drop that title? Because people still say President Bush and President Carter, and they still get called president after.
Yes, they do, and that speaks to how people use words not as accurate as they should. But I think in order to get past the insidious evil.
There we go.
Yeah, of this past president, he does not have the power of that office anymore. Right. And that is one saving grace about the United States of America. He certainly tried, right. But it looks like, when they say, whether it's 70 million or 71 or 70, every time I hear it's a different number. I don't know what the latest number is, but they always want to talk about the 70 million people or 70 some odd. So many millions of people voted for him. Say, what about all the other ones that did not vote for him? That number is bigger.
They don't understand that.
Well, for the same reason, a lot of people still talk about President Trump. No, he's former president, unfortunately. And that number that we need to be talking about is the number of people that did vote for him. Just like we need to talk about the whole concept of unity. What was all that unity when the other guy was in office and they were doing all this divisive stuff?
Okay, I got something for you. I'm not going to answer that question directly, but I'm going to answer around that question. And here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to say, did you notice how as soon as Trump got in office, everybody said, oh, well, Barron's off limits. Nobody can talk about Barron. But where was that same love for Sasha and Malia the 4 years prior?
That's another issue that we could talk about another time. But that shows the inconsistency of how people be manipulating, and I think we need to be more careful, which is my direct thesis. We need to be more careful about the words that we use. That's why I'm saying former President Trump. He is out of office.
Yes.
Case closed.
Well,
let's talk about President Biden. And one more thing too. A lot of times, did you notice that they would say Obama?
Yeah.
They didn't say President Obama. A lot of times that would pop up.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Well, I do think that Obama had some influence on President Biden. I think in their hearts, both of them are good men. As much as they can be in the Senate. Like the Senate. I often think of the Senate back in the Roman, times. Right. There's a whole lot to be said about that. But the idea of good men in a bad place, right. But certainly better than former president, who.
I mean, the bar is low. The bar is very, very low. It's almost on the floor, but it's amazing. But yes, it is better. So. I'm going to take a second. I'm going to I'm going to tell the listeners what we're going to be talking about today.
This is a perfect segue.
Right. And we are still, we're getting back into our book. We're getting back into our book of the month. It is still Destruction of Black Civilization by Dr. Chancellor Williams.
Dr. Chancellor Williams.
Yes.
My man.
I'm saying the doctor.
That's right.
So, I know I said that I didn't want to do a lot of shows where we're going to be digging directly into the book and talking about the material as it's written, but for what we're talking about today, we kind of have to.
I'm glad you said that because I'm not one to be in opposition, but I think quoting the book and then stating that as a fact because it's written. And anybody can check it out.
Right.
You see, it's like, this is what the man wrote in the book on page so-and-so. Right. You know what I mean? So I think that we can all come to some level of commonness, some level of agreement about this. Is that what it says, unless you can't read, right. But then comes the other part of it, our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own opinions, our own conclusions, our own points of view, and I think there's a difference between fact and opinion, you see, and I think in order to serve our listeners properly, faithfully, we need to say, well, this is a fact based on wherever it came from, right? And you're very good at that. I must admit, you're deep thinker, and a researcher. You're like a historical researcher. That's who this man is. A commoner. He be digging deep. I don't have time to do it to the level I want to be, but I certainly do have some opinions, and I try to state them as much as I can. But the idea is that as we throw out these quotes, and then we throw out our opinions, at least you'll know right off the bat which one is which, where I do see a lot of people, and there was one person that you brought to my attention a long time ago that was saying some stuff, and I'm like, I really don't think so. I haven't gotten a copy of the book to be able to check out what he was saying, but as I remember the book, the guy was misquoting the author, and I think that hurts us.
Oh, you mean Melville Herskowitz?
Yes. So, I think that dealing with it that way gives us, more credibility. I think that's what I'm looking for, more credibility.
I agree. And it gives you credibility because the way we're researching stuff, we find information that anybody can find. We just found information that anybody hasn't found. It's out there. And if you're doing your due diligence, you'll find it.
And what we're trying to do is we're trying to use the books that are readily available. They're right behind us.
Yes.
There's a whole wall. I mean, there must be how many different books out there, man?
Oh God.
100. Maybe 150 different books, and many of them are classics, as the one that we're reading from right now, The Destruction of Black Civilization, Great Issues of a Race from 4000 BC to 2000 AD by, it says Chancellor Williams, but as we have looked into the book, we say Dr. Chancellor Williams because he's teaching us a lot of stuff.
Man, I agree. And because we're talking about all these books on the wall next to us, I guess this is a good time for us to stop and mention exactly where it is that we're recording.
Yes, and how you can get the books.
Right. So for anybody out there who's interested in getting these titles, I'll be honest with you. Some of the titles that we're going to be going over are hard to find.
They are.
They're hard to find. You're not going to be able to walk into Barnes and Nobles and get most of these titles because Barnes and Nobles is not interested in selling these titles.
Nor should you want to go to Barnes and Nobles to get these books. You have somebody here that has taken the time to get in contact with whatever the sources is, and after you've read all 150 or so books, then complain. Yeah. But not until you've had a chance to go through them page by page, chapter by chapter, book by book.
Right.
There's a lot here, and this comes from men who have dedicated their lives. In fact, you may hear that a couple of times during our program today. They were early like trendsetters.
Yes.
And they were doing this at a time when it wasn't the norm, it wasn't acceptable. Yeah, it was not. Thank you. It wasn't fashionable. And they bucked the system that way. But they laid down some foundation that we can build upon.
Well, you're talking about an era where it wasn't just Dr. Chancellor Williams. It was Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, Dr.
Yes.
John Henrik Clark.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Dr. Ben.
Dr. Ben.
You know what I mean? These guys were fighting a narrative of white supremacy because that's honestly that's what this book is doing. It's telling you that white people and Asian people did not found Africa the way it was told to us for so many years in our whitewashed version of history.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And I say all that to say that these people were kind of vilified in their time. They were treated like they didn't know, like they didn't know what they were talking about. Their work was nonsense, and it was counter to the belief of white supremacy of the time. Right? Yes. These people are the reason why we no longer have to contend with the myth that Christopher Columbus founded America, stuff like that. And you're really not going to find this information in many other places unless you go into a black bookstore and you start picking up books.
You know what? I'd like to read the I guess you could call it the preface of chapter 6 on page 161 of The Destruction of Black Civilization.
Go for it.
Yeah, because I think this kind of summarizes it up, and then maybe if you feel it's a good thing to do, we can jump right into the chapter. It says, when, if ever, black people actually organize as a race in their various population centers, they will find that the basic and guiding ideology they now seek and so much needed is embedded in their own traditional philosophy and constitutional system, simply waiting to be extracted and set forth. And while the work in this field has yet to be advanced further, see, that's the part right there. Mm-hmm. At that time, he was saying the work in this field has yet to be advanced further. Some of the most fundamental principles of African political science and philosophy of life are to be found in the pages which follow. And then we begin chapter 6, which is entitled The African Constitution, Birth of Democracy.
Okay, we're going to get to that. I love that, but before we do that, let's tell the people where we're at, and I got a couple more things I want to get into before we jump in.
Okay.
All right. So, we are at Shades of Africa.
Yes.
What's Shades of Africa? Shades of Africa is a black-owned bookstore in Long Beach, California, and it just so happens to also be our book distributor. So if you're listening to these words and you're thinking, damn, where can I get these books? Hit up shadesofafrica.com. You can get any book that we talk about and at least 150 others, like we said, that are painted all over these walls. So that's shadesofafrica.com, and we can send books to you anywhere in the nation, and actually some places internationally. So go ahead and give it a shot. All right. Question. Have you heard of Betty Davis?
You asking me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Do you? I know this is obscure. What do you remember of Betty Davis?
To save time, I'm going to say teach, bro.
See, Betty Davis is interesting. She's an interesting character because she was there, she was big, and then she was gone.
Yeah.
And
yeah, that's true.
I'd
agree.
I'm a fan of Miles Davis.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of a huge fan of Miles Davis. I know all his work, and I was not aware of Betty Davis until I seen a documentary just recently.
Okay.
So.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right. So Betty Davis was once married to the jazz legend. She's the. Let me see. You know what? I'm trying to put pieces together of the essay that I wrote, so I'm just going to read it as it is.
Okay.
So, unfortunately, it has the introduction that I wanted to start with.
Okay.
So in listener land, we're going to act like all that whole part before this did happen. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hey, Mr. D.
Hey.
You know, I like to start our show by playing a little music, right?
Okay.
Well,
who's it going to be?
I thought that this one needed a little introduction.
Uh-huh.
Because this artist is a woman, and she was once married to a jazz legend.
Uh-oh.
Her name is Betty Davis.
Yeah.
She's the one-time wife of the jazz trumpeter Miles Davis.
Imagine the inspiration.
Right. Oh, there was some inspiration there. Yeah. We'll get to that in a minute. Now, I meditate from time to time and in my search for good meditation music, I found Alice Coltrane.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And when I learned about John Coltrane, I didn't learn that he was married to a woman who was also a legendary jazz musician.
Yes.
But here's another case of that exact same phenomena. In the case of Betty Davis, however, I kind of understand why I wouldn't have heard about her. So let's get into that.
Okay, let's get into it.
I got to admit, I'm a little embarrassed that I didn't learn about Betty Davis before because I love Miles Davis's music so much. I never really researched him, right? It's kind of a rule that I follow. If you admire somebody, then you don't do anything to learn anything about them. You don't ever research anything about their past because you'll always be disappointed, because everyone's done something, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of my rule. And I guess in a way, I've always treated Miles Davis the same way that people treat R. Kelly nowadays. They like his music so much that they ignore him as a person. I don't want to put Miles Davis in the same on the same level as R. Kelly, but because R. Kelly was a monster, he's a monster. You know what I mean? But Miles Davis was well known throughout the industry for being an asshole, right?
Yes.
And in typical asshole fashion, he was a wife beater too.
Yes.
I learned that from this documentary. It shook me. It really did. So I learned this from a documentary on Amazon Prime called "They Say I'm Different," and I want to encourage people to watch this documentary. And I don't want to spoil the details, but there are two things I will say about this documentary. And the first is that as a Miles Davis fan and a fan of jazz, I always loved Miles up until the point where he started doing jazz fusion. Right?
Okay.
Now, for those who aren't aware of what fusion music is, fusion began to pop up in the late 60s as jazz began losing popularity to other genres such as funk and rock and R&B. So classical jazz musicians began reaching out to other genres to quote-unquote fuse the genres. Miles began to fuse his classical trumpet with the electronic funk instruments of the funk genre. And I never liked this style. I always thought that music was terrible. Now, in the documentary, it really goes a long way to explain how Miles transitioned to his fusion genre. And a lot of that had to do with Betty Davis because Betty was the queen of funk. That queen of funk thing, I'm just knowing the story in advance. it kind of really upsets you or upsets me at least that I didn't know anything about her. So the second thing I'm going to say about this documentary, and I hope this really encourages people to watch, is that Betty, for a while, like I said, was the queen of funk, but she was also more than that. She was a trendsetter. The documentary makes a point of showing how in the era she began making music and performing, her act was really against the grain. Most black musical acts, at least of the mainstream ones, were actively trying to make their acts as lily white as possible. You know, we have it conjures images of the Supremes in these flowing white dresses, trying to make their music as similar to the popular white music of the time as possible. But Betty Davis wasn't doing that. As you heard from the song that we opened up on, Betty was different. Whereas most of the acts of her time performed in these flowing white dresses, she was a bit of an antagonist, way against the grain. She performed in what amounted to lingerie. And for her time, her music was hypersexual. For reference, the last couple of records she produced, one of the last couple of records she produced was called Nasty Girl, and this released in 1974. And in 1974, just for reference, the Billboard 100 included songs such as Barbra Streisand, The Way We Were, and the raciest song in the top 10 was Dancing Machine.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, Dancing Machine at number 5. Oh, and the Stylistics made an appearance at number 14. Just to give you some reference of what was in the top 100 songs of the day. Some people say that she performed in the wrong decade, which I agree. But I believe she was a sacrificial lamb, the prototype for women who didn't give a damn. Some people liked the effect that she had on the industry and some don't. But she wasn't just a woman talking about sex. She was a musical genius who raged against the machine in her own independent way. So if you guys get a chance, check out that documentary on Betty Davis called They Call Me Different, or They Say I'm Different.
Yeah, I think it's a good exploration to follow.
So I asked you, I talked to you about something that we were maybe going to talk about on the show. And I mentioned to you how I wanted to dig into the 1776 Commission, right?
Yes.
Okay. For those of you in listener land who aren't aware, the 1776 Commission was a response to New York Times' 1619 project. Trump didn't like the fact that people were telling a non-sanitized version of history. And so in response, he put together a commission that told a version of history that's super duper sanitized. And their report came out on January 18th. So I started reading this report. It's 45 pages. I got all the way to about page 10. And I told myself, I said, oh man, I can't read this anymore. I think this would be better suited in a session where you and I were maybe sitting down with two other people and just reading through the entire 45 pages of it and just riffing on it as we go.
We'll do it then.
I think that in fact, I kind of put that together already. I just need one more person.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do with that, because I think that's going to be fun. So look out for that in the next couple of weeks. We're gonna sit down. We're gonna talk about the 1776 Commission report, because it's interesting. To give a little bit of spoilers, it's the kind of document that suggests that the slave owners were actually abolitionists, and that slaves were happier during slavery. So we'll talk about that.
In typical Uncommon style. Yes. Yeah,
it's gonna be dirty, and you're gonna want to take a shower afterwards, but we're gonna talk about it. So moving on. You want to dig into let's do a feel good. Do you have a feel good story for today?
The rain in sunny Southern California. It was beautiful.
It never rains in Southern California.
Yeah, it was absolutely marvelous, you know. I was in a place where I could hear the rain coming off the roof and stuff. You know, it was like music to my ears. Best sleep I've had in a long time. And then I took my granddaughter out into it. Her first exposure, you know, to rain. And, you know, I took her outside. She wanted to put on her shoes. I said, no, I'm just going to hold you. You know, I said, look, see the rain. The rain's coming out the sky. I said, that's a marvelous blessing from God Almighty. You know, that's the water that we eventually drink. You know, I told her all of this stuff. And so I took her out, you know, and, you know, I said, that's the water coming out of the sky. It's a gift from God. Without that, we wouldn't have water to drink. Wawa? Yeah, that's the way she says water. You know, I say, wawa? I said, wawa. I said, you want to try? Stick your hand out. Stuck her hand out. She pulled her hand back, you know. I said, you want to get into it? No. I said, you sure? She said, yeah. And I took her out. We stepped 2 feet into the drizzle and then came back in. She said, ah, you know, I said, you want to do it again? Yeah. You know, she went out. We did it 3 times, you know, and she enjoyed it. You know, rain, for goodness sake.
The most simple things.
Rain, you see? That's my feel-good story. As a matter of fact, I would say that I saw something on TV, you know, which is called One Strange Rock. Mm-hmm. One Strange Rock. Narrated by Will Smith. I got to give him, you know, accolades for doing it, you know, in his, you know, streetsy style, half joking style and so forth, you know. But here you got 7 or 8 astronauts who spent time up on the International Space Station. 2 of them are black. Mm. One was a woman. One was a man. Right. You know, and each one of them had something to say about what they felt, what they thought, what they saw from the space station. I would recommend you look at it, that you see it, and you think about it. Let me just give you one really quick example, because this is almost like the rain. It's related to Wawa. Mm-hmm. You know, they talked about how something called, I believe it was called Diatoms. And these are like little animals. I guess they got little shells around them, you know, trillions and trillions upon them in the ocean, you know, and when they die, the shells sink down to the bottom. They create the ocean floor. Interesting thing, make the story short, they found these diatom shells in the desert in Africa, but they only grow in the ocean. Well, you know, you can draw your conclusions from that, but it seems as though what was once under the water was now out of the water in a desert, for goodness sake. But the thing that's interesting is that one of the astronauts was talking about how they began to see a dust storm, you know, from, I think it's 300 miles up. And, you know, the next time they came around and the next time they came around, and the dust storm was getting bigger and bigger until it blew across the whole southern part of Africa. Then it continued and went over the Atlantic Ocean all the way to South America. Imagine that. Trillions of tons of diatom, you know, and they ended up going to South America, into the Amazon. And then the guy said, well, the thing that's wonderful about this, is really interesting about this, is that, you know, it's like fertilizer. It's the perfect fertilizer.
I've heard that before.
You know, and so this whole process of something in Africa being flown across the Atlantic Ocean and being deposited into South America. Now, the rainforest is really special because it gets this fertilization that helps the trees to grow. The trees start sucking up the fertilization. They grow more. The more they grow, the more they suck water, you know, out of the earth, you know, and then it goes up into the leaves and it evaporates and it spires into the atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So those trees give us oxygen and water. Mm-hmm. In fact, they call it the river in the atmosphere, or atmospheric river, I think they call it. You know, trillions and trillions and trillions and trillions of tons of water floating in the air through this process.
What, you mean dust? Tons of dust floating through the air?
The dust has already been fertilized into the soil, but that triggers the growth of the trees, and then the trees begin to aspire the water that's in the earth and put the water back into the atmosphere again.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm feeling really good about that because it don't have nothing to do with any government or any man, technology or anything like this. The earth is doing it all by itself just like it's supposed to. Right. And for that reason, when I took my daughter out, to check out drizzle, the first time she got to see a drizzle in the rain, I thought it was important to do that.
So that's your recommendation for something to watch? Yes,
most definitely.
Okay. I got one for you too. Before we move into our book, God, man, I watched this crazy documentary, this wild documentary.
Well, what made it crazy?
It's called Goodnight, Sugar Baby.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
Oh man,
was it a black?
It's white people.
White people.
It's white.
Goodbye, Sugar Baby.
It's about this white family who. Okay, let me start with the mother. Now, this is a recommendation for you to watch this, so I'm not going to ruin the entire movie. But what I will say is that this lady that she was the head of the household for her family. It's called Goodnight Sugar Baby, and the reason the Goodnight Sugar Baby is a term that she got from her father, who used to molest her.
Okay.
Right? One of her sons is also her cousin.
Okay.
She had a son with her cousin.
Okay.
Right. And
interesting.
Let me see. In this you get it all in this documentary. You get murder. You get incest.
Yeah.
You get crazy white people. Everyone's on meth. It's honestly like the 2021 Tiger King.
Okay.
Yeah. That's how I would say it. It's gonna blow up when people hear about it. It's crazy.
Well, you said feel good story, right?
Oh no, that's just my movie recommendation.
Oh, okay. I got it now.
Okay. Yeah, I got sidetracked because you started talking about it.
Okay, I got it now.
So
yeah, because that doesn't sound like it feel too good to me, man.
That was not,
I'm sorry.
Was disgusting watching it, but it was interesting. It was entertaining. So a feel good story.
Yes, a feel good story.
And by the way, I wanted to comment on yours. I was going to say that that you live in California when your feel good story is that it rains.
Yeah, for sure. That is so true.
Okay.
That is so true.
So my feel good story actually has a lot to do with my job. And my job in TikTok. So I made this TikTok video answering let me back it up a little bit. I get a ton of questions about my job because most of the TikTok videos that I do, I'm in the crane, right?
Yeah.
So, people ask me a bunch of random questions and I don't mind answering them. So I decided that I wanted to do a video where I would answer the top 5 most frequently asked questions.
Okay.
Right? And that video sort of went viral.
Okay.
And in a good way. So I've had a ton of people for the past week or so hitting me up, asking me about my job and just different things here and there. And it's led to a lot of traffic to my page.
Excellent.
And people listening to the podcast. So
excellent.
I think that's awesome. So everyone out there in listener land, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. If I know you from TikTok, thank you for coming over to YouTube. I really do appreciate you.
That feels good.
It does. It feels great. So now let's get into what we're here for today.
Oh, okay.
Today we're going to be talking about the African Constitution. And I took a while and really dove into color coding and making notes in this book, and I don't know how much it's necessary, but I wanted to see if you have anything that stood out to you that you wanted to talk about right off the jump.
Well, this chapter I think is maybe one of the most essential for people to take a look at. If we can have a repeat of that first prelude to the chapter, I think it says just about everything I would like to say.
Okay, let's do that again.
Okay, when, if ever, black people actually organize as a race in their various population centers, they will find that the basic and guiding ideology they now seek and so much need is embedded in their own traditional philosophy and constitutional systems, simply waiting to be extracted and set forth. And while the work in this field has yet to be advanced further, some of the most fundamental principles of African political science and philosophy of life are to be found in the pages which follow. Now, I suppose it's important to say that, this book was written before the year 2000. You can look at the copyrights and see it. I first read the book in the 70s, and I think he was very on point to say that, because we need to dig a little deeper in order to be able to understand that just because we live here, we're not from here, at least not completely, nor do we depend on from here, at least not completely. We come from a deeper tree with roots that go way, way back. But the lack of knowledge of these things is the thing that kind of gets us tossed and turned around. Right. So without going through a lot of yada yada, I do want to pick out at least one sentence, and then I'll turn it back to you, because I didn't mark up this page. I just put my little Post-its on it, and I think the biggest part of it is in the back when he actually lists, and I think that's important to be read word for word. A number of, I guess we can call them articles of Constitution. Right. But here's one sentence that I think, points to what Dr. Chancellor Williams is saying. Skip a couple of sentences, and then we say, and this is on page 161, said, we are therefore primarily concerned only with those things which are characteristically African. Wow. Practically universal among them from one end of the continent to the other, and which thereby indicated an ancient common culture in a common center of black civilization. On this we stand. And then he goes on, and we can pick out sentence after sentence after sentence, and I hope we do, at least the ones that we find particularly salient. But I think that's it.
That was actually one of my notes.
Okay.
We're talking about the African Constitution, and the way Dr. Chancellor Williams describes this, it's an ancient form of democracy that spanned the entire continent. And the way he tells it, this constitution varied in language from empire to empire and from tribe to tribe, but as he suggests, the rules were the same continent-wide. So, part of the reason that I thought that it was interesting if we're going to talk about the African Constitution and how it's continent-wide, it helps to read the very first introductory paragraph to the chapter. So you actually read part of it. I'm going to read the rest of it. In our introductory preview of African history, references were made to the common origin of people the white world calls Negro. That here we study a single race, not races, and a single people, not peoples, is a major theory and fact of black history and one of our principal guidelines. We are, therefore, African, practically universal among them from one end of the continent to the other, and which thereby indicated an ancient common culture in a common center of black civilization.
On this we stand. I want you to read that again, because I was following you word for word, and you missed one line of that.
Okay, I thought I missed a line, because I was like, wait.
So start again. We are,
therefore, primarily concerned only with those things which are characteristically African. There we go. Now it makes sense. Practically universal among them, from one end of the continent to the other, and which thereby indicated an ancient common culture in a common center of black civilization. On this we stand, and I still have three more. In this light, the African Constitution is discussed as a body of fundamental theories, principles, and practices drawn from the customary laws that governed Black African societies from the earliest times.
That's good. That's good. Now, it just occurred to me that I believe in the British system, which kind of led to, I guess, what we can call the American system. I believe common law was the thoughts, the precepts that the British, English people, I suppose European people, and to some extent it was carried over, to the Americas when they got here. I think the word common law was kind of like the customary law that Chancellor is talking about now. Mm-hmm. But I think what Chancellor is trying to say, and I think his point is well taken, is that the Africans had a system of law which was multi. I'm going to use the word group. I don't want to use the word tribe because it has certain meanings. But these ethnic, were like different groups of people.
Multi-ethnic?
I'm not even sure I want to say that, but let's just say different people in different places were still practicing the same concepts.
Right.
And I think that's why we use the word customary. Mm-hmm. It became the custom of the people, and it was very widespread.
Right. Okay. I'd like to point us to page 262, the section. In our books at least, it's page 262, and it's a section titled "The Origin of African Democracy." It's the second paragraph in that section for us. Now look at how he points to the use of the word primitive. And remember, in our last episode, we talked about being conscious of people's use of language. Now, what do you think when you hear the word primitive? And then listen to what Dr. Chancellor writes here when he talks about the word primitive.
To be fair, ask that question of the people that are listening and give them a couple of seconds to answer that question, or maybe even write it down.
Right.
Yeah. Ask them.
Okay. Yeah. So do that. Think about, this is an exercise. Think about, before I read this, what you think of when you hear the word primitive. Pause it, maybe write down 5 or 6 words, and I guarantee you, after I read this, you're going to have a change, well, not a change of heart, but you'll understand another definition for the same word.
Okay, read on, brother.
Okay. Among the blacks, democratic institutions evolved and functioned in socio-economic and political systems, which Western writers call stateless societies or societies without chiefs. When these societies were referred to as primitive, when these societies were referred to as primitive democracies, the writers are doing, in fact, the very opposite of what they intended. Far from being just a descriptive term for backwards people, primitive also means the first, the beginners. Moreover, many of these quote-unquote stateless societies were states, in fact, without necessarily conforming to a predetermined Western structural pattern of state. Indeed, what is called a stateless society in Africa would hardly be classified as such in the West, for the Western definition of a state does not include the requirements of one man as its executive head. A state being any collection of people occupying a given territory and living under their own government independently of external control. Okay, now, what are your comments and your thoughts on that? Because there's 2 things that pop out to me. Well, I thought it was interesting, like I said, to be aware of the use of language, because it shows that they've been for a long time whitewashing and hiding things. That again, this is Dr. Chancellor wrote this as a response to the narrative of his time, which was it existed in the 60s. So I just think of the only reason that you would have to even add that in as a note is if you're directly responding to something. You know what I mean? Okay. That's something That's an odd aside to put into a history book to me.
Okay.
I just right. That's all just right. It stood out to me.
Okay. Well, just to make it quick, two things. When I read it, the word primitive popped out at me, because when you asked me that question originally, I knew that it came from the word prime. It came from the word prime. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it came from the word prime.
Or premier.
Or premier would be, yes. So, I've known that for a long time. And it makes me wonder if I know that because I had been exposed to this, or was it somebody else that has exposed to this and they ended up sharing it with me, and it just became a part of my thinking.
Right.
You see, that's how essential it is to read some of these early works.
Right.
Because prior to that, you got to think about, okay, all right, that's something I haven't thought about in a long time. Like Tarzan movies.
Right.
Boogity boogity, ooga ooga, and kind of black folks, in Africa were seen
that was
as savages.
Previous definition of primitive.
Yes, and let's not forget, the whole notion of slaves, like you were saying with the project, being happy, for being slaves because they were taken out of that primitive state that they had lived in. That kind of thinking. The Uncle Tom stuff. I don't want to get pulled off into that whole thing too much, but I think if you talk to your grandma and your grandpa, your great grandma and great grandpa, sometimes they will be saying things. Some of the older people in the church, and God loves them, and they did without them we wouldn't be here. We stand on their shoulders. I mean, I don't want anybody to say that I'm talking bad about our elders, Right. But the idea is that they were exposed to that notion of you don't want to be black. Right. There was shame in being black. And I believe people like Chancellor William, the other gentleman that you mentioned, I first comes to my mind is Dr. Ben, because I had a chance to listen to him a number of times, and he and Chancellor Williams and others. I mean, there were lots of other people. Right. There's a book we got behind me called A.J. Rogers, the 100 amazing facts about the Negro, which I'm going to buy.
with complete proof.
Yeah. Which is an amazing book in and of itself. And given the time frame that these guys were in, they were throwing out something that was quite different from what was being portrayed in the movies and the books. It's kind of like now, for those of you that are not that old, you're in your teens and your 20s, you got this notion about, the police, killing people and beating up people and all the rest of that stuff. Well, the idea that, every black person is a suspect,
right?
Is a thug. I mean, I've seen it on the news a lot. You might see this image of, they showed a black guy in handcuffs, can't talk, hair all messed up and stuff, and the darker he is, the closer they get up into his face.
Right.
You know what I mean? When somebody white do something, they fade way back. So it's hard to say, well, exactly who are they talking about? Because there's 3 or 4 people in the picture. You see what I mean? Which reminds me, which is the second thing. It has to do with this thing about, the head of state. We've just experienced well, there's so much to say about that too. to try to keep it short, this whole notion that democracy requires a head of state.
No, it doesn't.
No, but that's a notion that a lot of people have. Right. Just like they thought, primitive meant, simple, lack of thought, lack of advancement, lack of intelligence, lack of everything. It's, in other words, you're like subhuman. So this notion here is that Africans had a state without one person being the head.
Right.
And I do remember elsewhere in the book, it would take me time to find it, where they made some comments about how the chief, was a chief, but he had to listen to all the other people in the council.
Oh, we're going to be talking about that today.
Yeah, okay. So it seems to me that the idea of representation in Western democracy is kind of mimicking that, but
100%.
Okay. Well, speak.
I agree with you.
Okay.
I agree with you. I think that if you're tracing time, if you're tracing civilization through time, you can see that there were a ton of African civilizations that were set up around the same time, or if not prior to the Romans.
Yes, that's true.
And
I think you're right.
And so it's we know that the Romans had trade agreements with the North African nations near the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. So
yeah.
it only makes sense that they would have borrowed something.
Yeah.
We know that they borrowed the constructions. You see the Pantheon and some of these great African, Greek and Roman works, and then you go look at African construction, and you see that a lot of this stuff is just complete ripoffs.
Yeah.
You fancied it up and made it your way, but it's still a direct replica, or nearly a direct replica of that other thing.
And I do think you'll find certain historians that will say it because they didn't have the same notion of race or color or ethnicity or whatever that we have today.
Right.
They just there are many of them, even Greek and Roman, and Arab and so forth,
right.
that were just like, they wrote what they saw, period.
They wrote what they saw, but then they also there was a conscious effort on a lot of people's behalf to overlook the accomplishments of certain people.
Well, we'd have to be specific about that, but I think you will find this is not an all historians did this all historians did that, but you will find historians that wrote exactly what they saw and had no concept of, we're trying to denigrate the blacks to be inferior, because they just kind of wrote what they saw.
Yeah.
That's the kind of people that they were. I don't have the names, but I'm sure historians that do this kind of stuff, will be able to point it out. But nonetheless, I do want to read, and then I'm going to give the floor to you. The next paragraph, this is on page 163. It's the second paragraph, starting with these facts. You got it?
Yep.
Okay, it says, these facts are set forth at the outset because both the constitutional system and its offspring, African democracy, originated in chiefless societies. And what is even more significant, democracy reaches its highest development here, where the people actually govern themselves without chiefs. Oh my goodness, isn't that such a novel idea? Now, how long ago was that? Where did that start off at? That's pretty deep. Where self-government was a way of life and law and order was taken for granted. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because they're talking about people governing themselves, which is what democracy is supposed to do. Majority rule basically is the thing. And now that's being challenged. As soon as President Barack Obama became the president, a lot of people started talking about, something's wrong with the voting system. This can't be right. What you mean a black man in the office of the president? No, they had to. The only way this could happen is that they were fraudulent, and that's been running ever since. And let me just say one more thing. This thing about law and order, I know our listening audience has heard that, over the last 4 years in particular.
Oh, we're tough on law and order.
Yeah, law and order, right? Law and order, I want to ask you folks, just like we did with the other word, when I use the term, quote, law and order, unquote, what does that mean to you? When I use the term law and order, what does that mean to you? Quickly, write it down. You have your answer. But yet these folks in Africa, according to Chancellor Williams, had a notion about what law and order actually meant to them.
Right.
I think you'll find that it was quite different. So we'll read on.
The only thing I have to say about that really quickly is that the American society and the people who founded this American society that we live under, those people came here from Europe, but they lived under a king. And so I believe, it's just my opinion, I believe that when you have a group of people who are used to having a king, the idea of a chiefless society would not make sense to them, because regardless of what they've done, they still need that king figure at the top to tell them what to think.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? As opposed to the society that Dr. Chancellor Williams describes in the book, where the people told the king what to think.
Yes.
It's flipped upside down. I want to move this along to something that I thought was interesting, and I'm gonna read a passage that's gonna end with a question, and I want to see what answer you have for this question. So this is on page 164 in our book. It's near the end of the page, the last chapter. It starts with "There were quarrels." You got it?
Okay, I got it. Yeah.
There were quarrels and warfare between these member states of the common lineage. The highly immune aspects of African warfare that puzzled many Western visitors doubtlessly developed in the widespread recognition of the lineage or kinship ties. For much of the heralded tribal wars, the main objective was to overcome or frighten away the adversary, not to kill at all if it could be avoided. Hence, the hideous mask and blood-curdling screams whenever they charged. When the enemy was defeated or completely surrounded, escape routes were provided. Escape routes were provided, the victors pretending not to be aware of them. Indeed, there are reports of rest periods called when neither side seemed to be winning. At such times, the warriors on both sides might meet at the nearest stream to refresh themselves, kid each other, and laugh at each other's jokes until the drums, gongs, or trumpets sounded for the resumption of battle. This was traditional Africa. How did it change to this warfare of killing, lineage or no lineage? How did it happen that even now in our modern and advanced, in quotes, civilization, some of the most murderous and inhumane wars are fought by blacks against blacks? That's where I'm going to end it. And
okay, what's the question?
How did it happen that now in our modern and advanced civilization, some of the most murderous and inhumane wars are fought by blacks against blacks?
Well, okay, let me answer that first, and let me kind of go back to one, possibly two other things. I was not familiar with Dr. Joy's book.
Okay.
And it brought some realizations to my mind, because as I drive around the streets or walk around the streets of LA, I see black on black, disrespect. Mm-hmm. I'll give you an example. I went to buy some pizza, so I'm standing on the door. It says 3 people in the lobby of the pizza place, mm-hmm. And so this lady walks by me and I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, I'm waiting in line." "Well, that's okay. I already got my order online," and just by the tone of her voice, I could say, "Oh, this ain't going nowhere." Right. So being sensitive to that and not getting her to breathe all up in my face, because I want to keep my distance away from it. I'd rather just wait, let her go through her stuff, And of course, she didn't just go in and out. She had to have a problem with the guy on the inside because he didn't have the, whatever it was that she wanted, or,
typical Karen behavior.
Yeah. And when she walked out, she didn't say thank you or anything like that. So I said, well, that was a good choice for me to make. It's just like avoid the conflict. What I'm trying to say is that is a good illustration of how I see many black people, not always, but certainly enough. And in these hard times, more so than it used to be. I think a lot of black folks are self-hating, feeling bad about themselves, and they probably have a right to be. And many of the reasons why is because of what Dr. Joy said. At least it's a very plausible explanation. The years, I'm just going to say years, of rape, lack of opportunity, self-hatred, unspoken depression, liquor. My favorite one is that a lot of black folks think it's okay to smoke marijuana now because it's legal. Well, who told them it's legal?
Right.
It's the same. They shouldn't even smoke cigarettes, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
But they seem to be doing now that it's quote legal unquote, and they're buying it. They're spending money on it. Like my uncle used to say, what kind of fool spends money on cigarettes? I mean, because he smoked a lot. What kind of fool spends money on cigarettes to kill himself? So you're gonna die anyway, boy. I'm not a smoker, but he was. Right. And he couldn't break it because he was in the Second World War. Yeah. And it's something he picked up while he was in battle and stuff.
I picked it up when I was in War II.
Yeah. So things like that. The lack of fulfillment, the loss of hope, and read Dr. Joy's book.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Thank you. That's another book worth reading because she put a lot of work into that.
Yes.
And if you can't get the book, well, you can get it right here. And I think you need to read the whole thing. But if you want to get a quick taste of it, she has been wonderful enough to have one or two
lectures.
On YouTube.
Yeah.
So just put Dr. Joy.
And that's very much the Cliff Notes version.
Yeah. And the book goes into it way, way deeper than that. She was just trying to throw out some stuff to a group of people, I think. Was she in Europe? One in America and one in Europe?
I don't know, but that one that I sent you, she was sitting in front of a group of professionals and she was telling them what's up.
Yeah. And the more you think about it, I say, like, she is really on to something, man. Because, see, the beauty of a theory, or a premise, I'm gonna say, it's like your first thoughts, like Prime again,
Right.
It's like your first thoughts, your first, I wonder, those kind of things. It's like, if it has, like stamina, if it has validity, if it has some kind of like a strength to stand on, it begins to explain things to you. Right. You can put it to the test and see what happens. I don't want to waste time thinking about, because I got 5 on my head right now, but I want it to be culturally relevant as opposed to something else that I heard. But I suggested it to somebody, and then they started saying, yeah, that's like such and such and so-and-so and that, and I said, so then you think it's real? Yeah, I think it's real, man. That's the real thing, and as other people come across the concept, they begin to look at it and they like, yeah, that does make sense. So we're not just talking crazy talk. We're trying to explain things, and the more it is explained by the theory or the premise that you are operating under, the more valid it becomes. In other words, the better it becomes. So here, you got Chancellor saying some things that I think, they stand the test of time.
Right.
I better stop right there.
Okay. Well, moving on to the next thing that I wanted to bring up in the book. The next thing I want to talk about is on page 165.
Oh, okay. Allow me to do this.
Okay, go for it.
Allow me to do this, because there's several things that you skip completely but for the sake of time, so
Right.
you need to read, the rest of the bottom of 163 and the top of 164 before you get to that last paragraph that Uncommon read. But I do want to mention this, if nothing else, the whole thing about war, and the idea of what you might call a humane war.
Oh, I did skip over that. It was very okay. I'm a veteran.
Okay.
I'm a veteran, and I've been to war. I'm a combat veteran.
Oh.
So
Okay.
I'd be honest with you. I was honestly touched and shocked reading this chapter, and I know exactly what you're talking about because you're talking about the part that I just read where, let me see, let me find it. For much of the heralded tribal wars, the main objective was to overcome or frighten away the adversary, but not to kill if it could be avoided.
Imagine that.
Hence, the hideous mask and blood-curdling screams as they charged. Even when the enemy was defeated or completely surrounded, escape routes were provided, the victors pretending not to even be aware of them. Indeed, there were periods of rest called when neither side seemed to be winning. And that's when they would meet at the streams and joke with each other.
Ain't that a trip?
During the
How
war.
black is that? So when worse come to worse, we gonna fight. So no, God done whipped your ass,
right?
And so do you yield, fool? And then we yield, man. You got it, man. And they realized that they could easily be killed, but the idea was it wasn't to kill. It was to
settle a dispute.
There you go.
Right.
See that's our African brothers and sisters from a long time ago.
Man, and that's one thing that we could use a lot of right now. Now, I wanted to move on to something.
Page 165.
Right, and I think that this portion of the book would be super, super beneficial for us to adopt.
Read it.
Okay, so this is about halfway down the page, and it's the section that starts with the age grade.
Oh, I thought you were going to say lineage. Lineage. Okay. The age grade. Okay.
The age grade. The next chapter after that.
Okay.
So, the age grade or age set, also called class. Keep that in mind, was a very specific organizational structure through which the society functioned.
All right. Teach, brother.
Classification was determined by the period in which one was born.
Interesting.
All persons of the same year or within a general but well-defined period. All classification was determined by the period in which one was born. All persons born in the same year or within a general but well-defined period before or after a given year belonged in the same age grade. Each grade covered a block of years. Age grade 1 might include all children up to age 12, grade 2 from 13 to 18, grade 3 from 19 to 28, grade 4 from 29 to 40, and grade 5, 40 and above. Now, I put a special note around this next line, so pay attention to this out there.
Okay.
There was seniority within each grade according to age and intelligence.
Repeat that.
There was seniority within each grade according to age and intelligence.
And these are our black brothers and sisters long before who? The Asian?
The Asians,
the
or
Arab,
the Europeans.
or the European.
Now, here's part of that note. Intelligence and wisdom were supposed to match one's age, right? Mm-hmm. Now, stated another way, the African philosophy that accorded so much deference to elders was based upon the assumption that all living things being all other things being equal.
Yeah.
Those who were living in the world and experiencing life before others were born should know
more than
these others.
Yeah,
I lost my place.
Yeah. I know, because that's so profound. Like they should know. I don't want to take your thunder away, man.
They should know, but they don't.
But their idea was that if you have lived, right, you gain
points.
Okay. Experience.
Right.
Experience points.
Experience
How about that? You know, and that could be beneficial to the other ones that had not gained the same points or experience.
The reason that I made that note and
Yes.
that I highlighted that specific line talking about seniority, there was seniority according to age and intelligence, is because that shows that this society put an onus on intelligence.
Yes.
Right?
Excellent point.
So if they put an onus on intelligence, then that
They had
means-
to be intelligent.
Exactly. Which means that from the very lowest level, they wanted, education had to be a big thing because anybody could have assumed these positions.
To recognize it, they had to know it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's deeper than we probably realize. Let's put that out in the universe.
You know what? It is deeper, and I'm gonna continue the part that I made a note of, and this is why it's so deep. This qualification is important because it was later applied to the election of chiefs and kings. Now, when they have chiefs and kings, first they're talking about chief lists, and then they're talking about chiefs and kings, and they mention both in this chapter, so don't get confused.
Yes.
Okay. Now, being the heir to the throne was not enough. One had to meet other qualifications or be passed over. Therefore, being older or the oldest in one's group did not command the usual respect if one was lazy, a troublemaker,
Or a fool. Oh man, I almost interrupted you because I was thinking about that fool part.
Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Donald Trump could have never happened.
And all of these people, still talking this craziness, man. Say you ain't figured it out yet. Well, then those are going to be the fruits from the tree.
Yes.
Of ignorance and misery.
Poison fruit.
Yeah. Death.
Yeah.
Sickness. I mean, oh my God, well, you know what? Let me say this real quick. One of the things that I was going to mention before that I didn't mention because I wanted to keep it culturally relevant was that I heard somebody today say something about how black folks, not about black folks, because I thought that was the exception to the rule, is that how folks were like somehow thinking that because you were rich, you were good. Mm-hmm. Now, the converse of that would be because you're not rich, you're not good. Let me use different words. So if you're rich, you're good. If you're poor, you're bad.
Right.
You see, and I've heard that somewhere before by another extremely thoughtful, I'm like, wow, man, this guy's kind of heavy. You be saying a lot of stuff, Right. You kind of like, boom, 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 boom. You hit the point. You said, dang, that was dead on. He was talking about the whole notion of meritocracy, and how folks would be based on merit, feeling that they were better than somebody else. And now the merit was measured in, just take a guess.
What?
Money.
Oh, okay.
So if you had more money, you had more merit.
I wanted to say that.
Yeah. How about a bigger house? How about the school you went to? How about the neighborhood you live in? How about the car you got? And as well as I do that you got plenty of people out here trying to buy. They use the word status, but I would use the word merit. They're trying to buy. Yeah. And so they think that because they can buy this stuff, then somehow that leads to their
status going up.
Privilege. White privilege, because we can get a loan or we can this or we can that and that, but you can't, See, I got something you got. I got something that I got, but you don't have it. And that makes me better than you. So this whole notion of fool, was like, they preempted that whole thing by basically saying that, it's reasonable to expect that as you live your life, you gain more experience, you gain more intelligence about things, and so you got to like somehow pass that on to the others in your group. And that would eliminate this thing about, if you're going to lazy, then, no, we don't want you there. We don't want you in a position. You're a troublemaker. Oh, we can only imagine what that means. Or if you are a fool, as i.e. example given, EEG, example given, I'll use that one. Supporters of the former president of the United States, and the party Republican, okay, still talking that craziness, in spite of, well, you just name it, you want to name the COVID thing, you want to name the economic thing, you want to name the political thing, the treaties and policies that were made, the fact that the COVID vaccine is patented. But the money, from what I'm understanding, somebody told me I was wrong about this, so I don't know one way or the other. Money from the federal government was given to these guys to do the research, and then pre-sales, were promised. So here you got companies, whether they got the money or not, whether they got grants or not, they had multi-billion-dollar contracts in place before they even had finished manufacturing the product.
I can tell you, just based off of what I know of that story, that whoever told you were wrong is half wrong, because the government did give money to pharmaceutical companies, and that's what Operation Warp Speed was.
So therefore, that's what I think too. But I got to check my facts, and I don't want to argue with them back and forth about it. But check it out. The idea is that, given all of those facts, then why is it that these companies who still own a patent, right? If the situation is as bad as they tell us it is, then they need to this is a patent-free product. Since we need so many billions of vaccines, we don't have the manufacturing. See, that's the choke. That's the choke point. We don't have the manufacturing capability of being able to make enough in order to be able to, give vaccine, whether you believe in the vaccine or not, it's not the issue, but if we're going to manufacture the vaccine, then we need to spread this information out, so that other manufacturers can make this stuff. And as well as I do, since you were in the military, that they can have huge production facilities, and they'll build whatever they want. If they can build out machines of war, then they can build out machines of health.
If they wanted to,
if they want to,
if they were serious about this,
yes.
they can. What is it? Which act is it where they take over companies and start using them for military purposes?
Defense
Production Act, right?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Defense Production Act. I believe that's what it's called. And if they wanted to, they can use that and use Amazon to distribute vaccine anywhere in the world.
Listen, Amazon, McDonald's, Walmart, Target, what's his name? The coffee people, Subway. Yeah, I mean, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
It's like, and it'd be free.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? Because it's already been paid for. See, in other words, this is not a proprietary chemical or genetic process. This belongs to the people. Why? Because it was paid for by the people.
Right.
That's basically it. Tax dollars were used for this. See, but they've done it before. No. The internet is one of those things that they paid for by government money.
Right.
And then now we have to pay the companies. So let me shut my lips.
I will ask you something. Did you hear about that? Speaking of the vaccine and the rollout, did you hear about this truckload of vaccines that they had to give to people on the roadside in Utah?
No, I didn't hear about that, but I have heard about they had to give vaccines to some people that weren't, they didn't have appointments.
Okay, that's pretty much what this is a case of that. So what happened in this case was they had this load of vaccines that were supposed to be going to whatever, from point A to point B. And in the middle of point A and point B, there was a truck that was turned over that caused this traffic jam. And these vaccines had to be to this place within a certain amount of time. And this 18-wheeler turned over was going to cause hours worth of traffic. So all these vaccines were going to go bad.
Wow.
And rather than let the vaccines go bad, they decided to get out of this truck in freezing weather. I think it's like 18 degrees, and just start knocking on windows. Hey, you want a vaccine? Hey, you want a vaccine? Hey, you want a vaccine? My question is,
wow,
how would you feel if you were in traffic and someone knocked on your window? Hey, you want a vaccine? Fuck away from my window. Who are you?
I wouldn't do it.
Who are you?
Amazing.
They said one guy jumped out and just ripped off his shirt. Give it to me.
That is totally amazing.
I wouldn't do it. All right, moving on. Back to our book. Now, we started talking about the age sets, right?
Yes.
And I think it'd be interesting for us to kind of dig into these age sets and talk about some of how they worked. And in order to do that, we're going to have to jump over the page 166.
I'm right there.
To the early education chapter.
Okay. Then we're going to have another session about the political theories and the articles of the African Constitution, because reading each one of those is going to take a long time. He laid it out pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we got to do this in kind of like a progression, because he's setting up the foundation on which these articles, rest upon. Yeah.
So you want to do this part 1, part 2?
It's kind of looking like we might have to do that, because this is an important section too. Early education. Right. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, let's start with early education. All right. So listeners, this is probably going to be a part 2. Now you got it. All right. You like that announcement? Okay. So starting, I'm gonna skip a couple lines, but I'm gonna start in the middle of this first paragraph here, and it is the children. The children's set covered the years of game and play. Around the ages of 6 and 7, however, general training and some little jobs became mingled in with play. Primary education included storytelling, mental arithmetic, community songs and dances, learning the names of various birds and animals, the identification of poisonous snakes, local plants and trees, how to run and climb swiftly when pursued by dangerous animals. Child training also included knowing and associating with members of one's age group as brothers and sisters, and to regard them as brothers and sisters until death and beyond. I thought that's interesting, and that's similar to what I do in my own house. My youngest is about my middle in my house is about, she's 8 now. She's been helping out in the kitchen now for about a year and a half. And my son, my little guy, he's 5, and we're just now starting to get him to help out, take out the trash, little chores, little small things here and there that you can add into their playtime. And I'll be honest with you, at least my son, he really does a pretty good job for accepting some of those playful things that turn into work. He's really good about it. Like, I can imagine. He likes building stuff and trying to use tools and stuff already. So I took that, or I read that, and I was like, okay, I'm doing all right in that regard. Let's see what this next grade level looks like, right? So the next grade level, the next grade above childhood was teenage, which was ages. It doesn't say this in the book, but it's ages 12 through 18. Okay, so the next grade above childhood was teenage through 18. These periods, of course, varied in different societies. Now, keep that in mind. That's note. Now, both training and responsibilities were stepped up. Playtime was either over or very much limited. Education and training became more complex and extensive. The youth's entire future depended on their performance at this age level. He or she was marked for success or failure in this second age set that began at age 13. The boy now was required to learn his extended family history and that of his society, the geography of the region, the names of neighboring states, and the nature of relations with them, the handling of weapons, hunting as a skilled art, rapid calculation, clearing the brush for planting, the nature of soils and which kinds grew what best, military tactics, care and breeding of cattle, the division of labor between males and females, bartering tactics, rules of good manners at home and abroad, competitive sports. Oh, it should have said and competitive sports. He was required to provide leadership examples for the childhood age group below and responsibilities to the age group above.
Keep reading.
The next group, the apprentice system, in which one became a skilled craftsman, was one of the most important of the second level age set activities.
Stop. See, apprenticeship to this very day still used.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And me as a union member,
you know it.
I had to become an apprentice to become a journeyman.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's all part of the thing. Apprentice only means that you're learning from someone else, that someone else is giving you their skills. So it makes sense that this is called the apprentice system, because this is where you learn this is where you craft your skills, your I don't want to say career, because that's not necessarily your skill set. Let's say that.
Okay.
You craft your skill set. Okay. So in the apprenticeship system, one becomes a skilled craftsman. This was the most important of the second level age set activities. This is another reason why this age grade was the most crucial of all. At its end, one went through the initiation rites for the exalted level of manhood. And we've had a whole episode on manhood.
Yeah.
The girls' age group differed from those of the boys. Introduction to womanhood roles, for example, was earlier. They had the same intellectual training as the boys: history, geography, rapid calculation, poetry, music, and dance. The training in childcare, housekeeping, gardening, cooking, marketing, social relations, with particular stress on good manners. These were some of the essentials in the age grade education and training of young people at this level. Here, I wrote a special note. Pay attention to this. Housekeeping, mentioned above, does not reveal the important kind of training that came under that heading. For its most important aim was how to be a successful wife, an everlastingly desirable wife. In many societies, this training by older women away from the community included the art of exciting sexual intercourse, position variations, cleanliness in the relationship, and, in short, the do's and don'ts of intimate relations. These early black societies were in many ways far in advance of the modern.
Yeah. Isn't that something?
I thought that was interesting because, and I wrote a note on that housekeeping. I'm going to read that again just for a second, and then we're going to, dive off into a small discussion about that. Now, housekeeping from the book mentioned above does not reveal the important kind of training that came under that heading. For its most important aim was, quote, how to be a good wife, a successful wife, unquote, an everlastingly desirable wife. In many societies, this training by older women away from the community included the art of exciting sexual intercourse, position variations, and cleanliness in the relationship, and in short, the do's and don'ts of intimate relations. Now, I read that to my wife. And I asked her what she thought about that. And she said, I wish that we'd still practice that.
Oh, okay.
How much sense would it make for you to learn the do's and the don'ts of relationships from the elder women in your society?
Yeah, and I would say for the men too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just to be on balance, so that we don't have any women saying that we were being, chauvinistic or something. Yeah, unbalanced or unfair. So, ladies out there, we think the men need to know the stuff too. Somebody needs to tell you something and make life a little bit smoother.
It makes sense when you consider how much power these women had in these households in African societies.
Well, allow me to say this real quick. It goes on in the second paragraph to say something about the young women in grade C were generally wives They were responsible for the planting and caring of the farms, the heavy work of bush clearing, etc. And that's what it says right here, bush clearing. Having been done by the men. I guess that's having first been done by the men, so it's the maintenance of it. The operation of the markets. Now, markets, like that's, like in Africa, they have the marketplace, where the people are selling, all the things that they need. It's like a big, I guess many folks here would call it a flea market. Right. But the marketplace is where you could find the food and, the hardware store, this, that, and the other, tools and daily necessities. Then it goes on to say that the visiting and the care of the sick and the aged, the formation of women's society, the media of women's social, economic, and indirect, but very real political influence. Yeah, okay. So maybe I can reprieve myself by saying here they're talking about women's societies, which is the media for women's social, economic, and indirect but very real political influence. See, so they had influence and it was acknowledged. This is one of the things they had to learn about. And they were responsible for and in supreme control of all matters concerning the house. Now I think it gets better. So let me say that again. They were responsible for and in supreme control, emphasis on the word supreme control of all matters concerning the home. In these societies, they had a female fighting force as well. And women armies were formed almost entirely of the Grade C group. Now, isn't that something?
Women armies.
Yeah, women armies. I've heard about them.
The Mali Empire was well known for their female armies.
Yeah, I have. Bad ladies. You didn't want to mess with them. You're in trouble if they got you.
So I'm gonna read a couple lines from the next chapter, or not next chapter, next paragraph. In terms of constitutional rights and duties, the two were inseparable in early Africa. There was not much difference between the age C group and the age D group. Seniority was the significant difference, since age D was from age 29 to 40. Otherwise, members of this class, upon reaching the age of 36, were eligible for election to the most highly honored body of society, the Council of Elders.
Boom, it is.
So that's where we talked earlier about how this society puts an onus on intelligence. And that's where you would see an intelligent 36-year-old who is allowed into the elders group, which is typically for 40 and above.
Yeah, and I suppose for the same reason. So now you are being exposed to, the elders, the older, more intelligent, certainly more experienced members of the group. And so this is like an apprenticeship for becoming a leader.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Apprenticeship, huh?
Yeah, apprenticeship.
So I just wanted to make a note of something, because he calls the C group, the third group, the apprentice group, right?
Yes.
I went a step further and I began calling the D group the journeyman group.
Okay.
So that it just makes sense to me that when you graduate from an apprentice, you graduate to a journeyman, at least in union speak. So it just made sense that it would fit. And it does fit. So moving on to the next chapter, or at least the next section in this chapter, and we're talking about the beginning of the judicial system.
Okay.
Right? So now we're going to start off talking about chiefless states again. In chiefless states, the function of the elder was wholly advisory. For this reason, they rarely ever met as a council. A council meeting might be called by the senior elder in case of extreme emergency. Matters involving members of the same family or clan could be settled by the family council, each family or clan having its own elder. Conflicts between families or clans could be brought before any mutually acceptable elder for settlement. The elder's judgment was not binding on the parties to the dispute. This was the constitutional theory. If the case was big and serious enough and disputants were dissatisfied with the elders' decision regarding it, they could call in one or more additional elders to hear and pass on the case. Their decision was also advisory and could be discarded by the parties to the action. Yes, the elders' advisory judgments could be ignored under the ancient African constitutional law. That's interesting. So we have elders.
Mm-hmm.
We at least get the advice of our elders before we decide to proceed with whatever.
Yeah.
But if the elders tell us something that we don't like,
we could move on.
We can still do it despite what they said, right?
By using other elders.
Right, but because they're advisory. Now, we have this option to not listen to the elders. However, what I did not read, the next sentence says, yet, under practical operation of that same constitution, the disputants could ignore their elders' judgments only at their peril. For to ignore the elders was considered to be ignoring the community itself. The only exceptions to this were in those cases where the elder or elders rendered an obviously bad decision.
Yeah, pretty deep. I like it. So you had kind of like the family or clan elders, and there were so many of those, and then I guess from those you ended up having maybe that was the council or maybe from that became the council of elders, maybe the most esteemed that have proven themselves over time. Excuse me. And this is way before you even get to the chief, who is the big elder, I suppose. What do you think?
Yeah.
Excuse me.
We're going to get into it a little bit later, but it's interesting how they have their council of elders, but like you said, they also have a family council.
Yeah.
And in this society, I have it written in my notes for later on, but I'll say it now. In this society, it's really interesting how they function similar to what we know of ancient Asian societies and how they function based off of the honor system. Everything that you do was to honor or dishonor your family.
Yeah.
And that made a huge deal in this culture, just like what we know of ancient Asians. So moving on, the last paragraph of that page, the Constitution.
Oh, wait, before you get there.
Go for it.
Yeah, because I think it's important. It says, even though it was not left to the contestants to say whether the judgment was good or bad, even then it was not left to the contestants to say whether the judgment was good or bad. The community decided, because the community was thought to be represented in the ever-present crowd at such hearings. They, the people present, always indicated their attitude by expressions and nods of approval or disappointment of the decisions reached. So they got instantaneous feedback, and it was truly your laundry was out in the open.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of stuff we might not be thinking or doing or saying, when it's out. So, you had to be right. Yeah. Otherwise you're just going to hear from everybody. Imagine the shame, the embarrassment, imagine the acknowledgments if you were right. You know what I mean? And it became many minds involved in this as opposed to one person. Right. But this was only after, two people had a dispute.
Right.
Other than that, they weren't involved.
Right. Exactly. So the constitutional theory and principle here are especially significant because of the important form that they took in all African societies in every part of the continent as they evolved from societies without chiefs to centralized states under chiefs and kings and emperors.
Now, I think that's important. I do want to mention that because that clarifies the whole idea of the groups grew and they became so large.
Right.
You know, and I think early in the book he was talking about how some of them were scattered because of climatic conditions and so forth. Again, this is before the Europeans, the Asians, the Arabs, well, in the reverse order. Right. The Arabs, the Asians, and the Europeans, you know, came in. And so as certain nations probably grew, I suppose, you know, they had better resources, maybe more food, more water, better climate, this, that, and the other, more animals, you know, to hunt and, you know, eat and so forth. So some groups would grow bigger or maybe faster.
Right.
Thus, they were bigger than others. And I think this became where, okay, now we got centralized states. And because of that, since you just couldn't always have 10,000 people, you know, or 100,000 people or whatever the number was, you know, they began to operate under chiefs, kings, and emperors. And
then what we see is we have something, the book doesn't use this term, but what we have is something called transference, right? And it's the same thing like when Rome accepted Christianity. They accepted Christianity, but they also instituted with their new Christianity some of the old pagan rituals and beliefs. Yeah. And so that's what we have here is where they went from a chiefless society to a society that was to these centralized states under chiefs, kings, and emperors, but they keep some aspects of their old society, right?
And it does say, next sentence, this is on page, the bottom 168, in this continent-wide constitutional development, the chief or king became the mouthpiece of the people and the instrument for carrying out their will. This just emphasize that, especially now,
right?
In this country, you know, the chief or the king became the mouthpiece of the people and the instrument for carrying out their will. They still had no, quote, ruler, unquote, in the Asian or European sense. On questions in dispute, he was in the same position as litigants in the chiefless states. Like them, under the Constitution, he had absolute power in theory, and in theory he could ignore the council and do exactly as he pleased. But in practice, like the disputants, he did not dare defy the council of the elders, which also had evolved and become the people.
In quotes.
Yes. Quote, the people, unquote. Comma, their direct representatives. See? So he knew that his power came from doing that. And I have heard stories where when kings didn't do that, they you know,
I mean, well,
they suffered the consequences of that.
What he's explaining here is the king is the people. The people are the government.
Yes.
You know, as opposed to the people run by the government. The government is the voice of the people, the absolute voice of the people, and it kind of, I mean, in a way, this is what the thing that they have set up here in some way is how our government is supposed to work. Our democracy here in America is supposed to work like this. You're supposed to be able to reach out to your congressman or your local elected official who's supposed to take your concerns to the Hill with them when they go vote for some of these things. Now, if you can't get a hold of your congressman, that's then you're just like the rest of us in 2021. But these elders, this council of elders was effectively their Congress, right? Or am I seeing that differently?
No, I think you're right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So moving on to the next paragraph. Africans generally prefer to dwell on constitutional theories and not the constitutional practices. Again, Africans generally prefer to dwell on constitutional theories and not the constitutional practices. They they proudly speak of the freedom and absolute powers of their chief or king. Some will even tell you that the king owned all of the land in the country. They're not trying to deceive you. Words of another language often fail to translate the people's concepts or meaning. When they say that the king is the supreme or has absolute power, what they mean is that he has the absolute power to carry out the will of the people.
Yeah, not absolute power.
Right. And I thought...
But absolute power to carry out the will of the people.
I thought that was interesting for us to talk about, especially seeing the events of the last year in particular, where...
Why stop there?
Because that's when it turned up. That's when it turned up. That's when those people really decided that they wanted a God King. They wanted Trump to be there. He wasn't the president. He was the God King. We have clearly stated rules in this country that say that if you're lucky enough to get a second 4-year term, that's it. You don't get anything else after that. I've heard people talking about they wanted Trump for 12 years. 16 years. Trump's not even going to be alive for 16 years.
Yeah. He certainly wasn't carrying out the will of the people as he promised.
No.
Because I do remember him saying that once, and I said, oh, no, I know better than that, and it's certainly proven to be true. Instead, he and many other people like him, I would say people in the House of Representatives, people in the Senate, people in the judiciary, people in the state legislators and so on, who got this idea of, how do I put it as simply as I can? I know how to put it. So let me just skip all of that and instead say that it's been said that first we got to protest. So thank all the young brothers and sisters.
Right.
Okay. And then after that, we have to vote. Now, some people thought voting was a good idea. Some people didn't. I think it is. Okay. Right. You got to vote, Now, after that, you got to boycott, which is like a vote with your dollar bill. After that is what I'm talking about. You got to be up in these fools' faces constantly telling them what you want because, they are immature enough to think that, 100 letters or 100 emails or 500 letters or 500 emails somehow represents all the rest of the people, and Trump specifically said he would be a president for all the people. Clearly, as the news has portrayed it, and out of his own mouth, even up to just recently, he's not talking about all the people. He's just talking about the people that did what? Voted for him, people that support him. I dare say there's been a number of times where you talk about they were loyal to him. As a matter of fact, let me say this and then get off my soapbox. Everybody that's listening to us needs to tell everybody that they can, that they need to go listen to the 102 minutes of conversation that Trump had with the Secretary of State of the state of Georgia, because it's like the same thing as in the Ukraine. Like, I want you to do me a favor. You know what I mean? But this time it's recorded and you can hear it for your own self. I rest my case on, your listening of that conversation. It's easily available. Just, Google it.
And I'm glad they put it out too.
Yeah. I got to applaud those white boys. I really do, because he tried to bring the hammer down on him. And as a matter of fact, there's been another number of people that have spoken against Trump, and they're now being what? Censured, So basically, and one more thing. I heard today that either 3 out of the 5 or maybe all 5 of the lawyers that Trump wanted to use, to go to the impeachment trial, it's like they're saying, nah, we're not going. I'm off the case.
How come he doesn't use Giuliani?
Well, Giuliani can't go specifically because he is expected to be a witness. That's why.
It's funny. I said that facetiously. Trump decided a couple weeks ago that he was not going to pay Giuliani any of that money that he owed him. You know that.
Well, then that's the second reason.
That what was it, 20,000 per day or something? Yeah, he's not paying. He's not paying him.
He throws everybody under the bus. Anybody that wants to work with this man is like, you ain't figured it out yet. I mean,
crazy. You got to be out of your mind.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So, as he demonstrates, he is not a president, nor is he capable of being a president, and he's not even that kind of person to begin with, but from his own words and his own actions, that is the evidence that you look upon to say that he can't be a person representing the will of the people, right. Period.
100% agree, 100%. And just for reference, I've been seeing Ivanka 2024 banners. Just saying, it's these people are still out there. They haven't gone anywhere. If
that's what they want to do, that's what they do. So then what I would say is that then we need to start now. Each one tell 10. Each of those 10 tell 10 more. So after 2 evolutions of that progression, we got from one person, you, the listener. You got the next 10. Each of those 10 doing 10. Then it's 100. So it goes from 1 to 10 to 100. Now, if that's too advantageous, then do 3. Right. So it's 1, 3, 9, 27. Or do 2. Which is almost like the way the computer system is based on it. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, and so on. 522.
No, it's 512.
Oh, okay, 512. Thank you.
It goes from 128 to 256 to 512, and then 1024.
There you go. That's right. You're right. See how fast that goes. And we need to make it to the point where anybody that's supporting this man or those principles, I don't care what position they're in, I don't care what company they work for or what political office they have, you vote their ass out. See, you vote their ass out because the vote is still counting, so if we have like a 90-10 split on the vote coming up, next time around in the midterms, and, same thing, even if it falls short, it'll be 80-20, and the argument that the people still want this man to be a president becomes moot. And they'll try to fight it, but it's really hard to argue with that. When it's close, 41, 50, 49, 51 or something like that, then, they can kind of, but when it's like 60, 40, nah, less so. When it's 70, 30, nah, less so. When it's 80, 20, nah. It's beyond 2/3. See, it's like 2/3, 1/3. Right. You see what I mean? And for that reason, they'll say it just because they're going to say it. But for more and more people, it becomes, nah, that's not going to work.
I agree with that.
See?
I agree with that.
So we got to do it.
All right.
Anyway, next paragraph.
I'm not going to read all of this, but I'm going to read about half of this paragraph because it speaks to something that I just mentioned about a second ago.
Okay.
A couple minutes ago. In the chiefless society, the elders were the overseers of land distribution to families. Finally, nothing contributed more to the efficiency and success of self-governing without governors than the system wherein each age grade was responsible for the conduct of its members, and that before any misconduct could reach one's age grade council, it was handled by his family council. This never meant leniency. This meant the very opposite, because each family was jealous of its honor and image in the community. And any member whose behavior was reflected unfavorably on the family would be in trouble with their own family first of all. So that speaks to exactly what I was just talking about. How this society works on a honor-based system similar to what we know of Asian culture.
Yeah, their own family. First of all, they would be in trouble with their own family. First of all, can you imagine if a man did something crazy, and so now he's in trouble with his wife, his in-laws, right. The uncles and the cousins and all that kind of stuff. Before he ever got to, the larger group of the community. Right. That could be very persuasive.
Right, because what are we talking about here? We're talking about something that seems to elude us in America in the 2000s, and that's accountability.
And I would say, just to be balanced, if a woman did something crazy, she had to deal with her husband, mama and daddy and the in-laws and the aunties and the uncles and the grandmas, so it worked the same for either or. I don't want it to think like it's going to be the guy that's going to mess up, So the immediate family, the ones that you were closest to, the ones that you probably depended on the most, the ones you spent the most time with, were of immediate counsel to you, and I'm assuming that they would like, hey, look, now, don't do that. Don't we still do that now?
Yeah.
I remember times when, we'd get together for, the holidays. A lot of people still do it on birthdays and things like that, But if you're blessed enough to have a family where, the family gets together, even now with all this isolation and separation. Oh, don't let me forget a point about isolation. Okay, having your family, the ones you listen to, the ones you trust, the ones that you've lived with the most, kind of pull your coat to. Oh man, you need to handle that differently. Oh, you shouldn't have done that. Well, let's keep it quiet. Right. So let's minimize that. Let's push that into the background so it don't get out. And other people don't need to know, and it just be our little family secret or our family whatever. And you probably would have more love for the person because you know them so intimately. Their strengths and their weaknesses. Sounds to me like a good system.
Right, and this is something that I've noticed, at least in our community, more so than others, is that when you really think about it like this, we do have a tendency to hold each other accountable more than other cultures.
Yeah, we do.
I didn't really think about it until I was, reading through this chapter and really thinking about accountability as a society.
That's why it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's something that we've always kind of.
That's why we say Dr.
played with a little bit.
Yeah, Dr. Williams. Yeah.
So moving on to the next next paragraph. It was therefore in societies without chiefs that kings where African democracy was born, and where the concept that the people are sovereign was as natural as breathing.
Breathing.
And this is why in traditional Africa, the rights of the individual never came before the rights of the community. Individual freedom was unlimited until it clashed with the interests or welfare of the community. This is also why the evolution to a highly centralized state still found the king under communal law, not above it, and definitely unable to do as he pleased.
Yeah, good one.
I highlighted that one, that section in particularly, because it makes me think about all these jerk-offs that refuse to take coronavirus seriously.
Oh, okay.
Because they feel, or because of their individual freedoms. Nobody cares about your individual freedom.
Good point.
Nobody cares about your individual freedom. When you can carry a disease that you can spread to every single person that you see, nobody cares about your individual freedom. I was talking to
good point.
I was talking to a dude earlier today, and he was talking about how man, if we want to get this coronavirus thing handled, we might have to just make it illegal for people to be outside and just shut down the whole world for a couple weeks. And I said, well, yeah, I mean, that's what it's looking like.
Yeah.
That's what it's looking like. Because,
I think you're right.
Because too many people are, this is America.
Mm-hmm.
And America is a very individualistic place. It's inherent in our culture, the whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps mentality, and you're all on your own, and it's all about the individual you instead of the community that you live in.
Yeah. I there's wisdom in that. You know, I can't come up with a specific thing in my mind, but I have thought similarly about something else. I think it had to do with the whole idea of, you know, the amendments, you know, like freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. Oh, maybe that's what it was. You know, it's like, you know, we got people talking about, well, you have a right to say this or to say that and the blah, 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 you know, but in the African context of it, it was like, you don't have the right to say that when it hurts people.
Right.
You know, your right to speak freely does not supersede the community's welfare and well-being. You know, that's a black thing. That's an African thing.
It doesn't. You know, I have issues with, okay, you got freedom of speech. Well, when you say that, I got freedom to come and fix your speech.
Yeah, why not? You know.
Oh, you still want your freedom of speech?
Yeah.
You still want your freedom of speech? Yeah. Freedom of speech is a license to be an asshole.
Well, the way it's portrayed here, the way it's understood by many here, but on a higher level, it's a responsibility.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. But the way it's wielded as a weapon.
Yeah.
It's wielded by people who just want to say terrible things and do terrible things and well, that's my right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I got rights too.
Yeah, I got rights too. Yeah. So where does it take us? You know. You know. Yeah.
Let's follow this to the logical conclusion and see how you feel about that.
So I think this basis that Chancellor has spelled out. I've said it a number of times. I want to see you folks writing back to tell us what you think. I'm really curious about other opinions and points of views, whether you agree or disagree. But as far as I can see it, even to this day, you know, the truth of this, and I've been around some African people, and I do notice certain level of continuity, in customs, belief, and so on and so forth. You know, that as an African American, I felt like, oh, yeah, that feels good. That feels right. You know, I think we carried it across the water with us, and it lives in us even to this very day. You know, if you feel and you agree with some of these things that we have literally quoted as best we could, we'd like for you to write in and tell us what you think about it. On the other hand, if you do not feel that this is correct, we'd like for you to write in and tell us. In either case, whether you agree or disagree, we would like to know the reasons with an S at the end of it, as to why you feel the way you feel.
Yeah. And I was about to start singing, the reasons that we feel. You know, I agree with that. I would like to start hearing more from people. I get a lot of good feedback about the show being good, but I want people to interact with this.
Yeah.
I want people to interact with this. So I'm thinking that this is probably a good place to wrap. We're going to make part 2 of this. And so we'll pick up part 2 right where we left off part 1. We'll start off with some political theories and principles of ancient African constitution law and the fundamental rights of African people. And we're going to cover that section next week. And we'll also cover the fundamental rights of African people. So those sound like the same. They're not the same. and we'll talk about it next time we see you.
Yeah, that's kind of, where I wanted to start. But as you have done in the past, you be breaking it down, bro. You know what I mean? And in excruciating, I'm going to say tedious, but well-founded clarity. We got to understand the roots from which these principles and rules, which became law, and they seem to, be something that was continent wide. It shows the thinking of the larger group of people, like the way they built the houses, right. They built them like compounds, right. So there was the big family, the first family, the elders, like in one part of the compound, and then over to the side over there, you had, sons and his family, and over to the other one, you had the other son, or you had a daughter over here and a son over there, but they were within compounds. Right. You know what I mean? And they usually had walls built around them. So multiple generations were living in family together.
Sorry about the feedback. I put my headphone right next to
multiple generations were living together in the same area, and I think that kind of carried over to the Africans that came over to America. The Americas, which specifically means America, like North America, right. North and South. East and West, I think that as the Africans met with the native people here, the indigenous people here, the other tribes of people that were here, the other groups of people that were already here, they felt commonality. Same thing happened when they went to the islands, the Caribbean islands. Mm-hmm. Same thing they went to the Central Americas, mm-hmm. and the same thing they went to South America and all of that. And I dare say that as the Africans spread out over the planet, into the Middle East and into, what we now know is Central Asia, I suppose, Afghanistan, India.
I still call that the Middle East.
Yeah, yeah, and it kept going to the East, Asia, which is now like, China, Japan, and all the rest of that stuff. Yeah, all that stuff, and I think that native, they carried these I'm going to call them precepts, or maybe I should use the word concept. I think there's a difference between the two, but they brought these concepts with them, and when people found out that they worked, they adopted them. Right. That's why you got black people all over the world.
Right. Even in Russia.
Yeah. Ooh.
Go figure.
Yeah. So it makes good sense for us to continue next time. Not next Sunday though. Okay. We got a young brother, playing, who I've seen him play once. He's a fabulous strategic quarterback.
Okay.
And I actually think this is a game worth watching. I'd like to see it. That's next Sunday.
I don't have a clue what you're talking about. I stopped watching football years ago.
Super Bowl.
Oh, the Super Bowl. Oh,
yeah.
Damn.
Now this is the Chiefs. Yeah. This is the Chiefs. We'll have to see how it goes. But I saw the Chiefs play one time, and they were up against a real good team. And I was like on one side of the field, and them guys were hitting. They were knocking over. Well, I'm not gonna say who. Just out of respect for them. But them guys are bigger than me. 200, 300-pound dudes, and they like bam, and, you could hear it all the way across the field. They were just bowling them over like they were like tissue paper. And I said, "Good Lord, what kind of team is this?" Oh man, these guys are pretty good, Right. And then they got the runners, and they got a thinking quarterback, as young as he is,
What's his name?
Mohan. Let's see.
Oh, Patrick Mohan.
Mohan, right? That's how you say his last name?
I think so.
Yeah.
He's black?
Yeah. He's mixed, but he's black. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know he was black.
But now you do.
Okay.
That's why it's worth watching.
Yeah, he's the guy that took over for Alex Smith at the Chiefs.
Yes.
Yeah. I see. I know football. I can tell you, I can talk football with you all day. I can talk football with you all day. I just stopped watching football.
Can't blame you, but
I stopped.
I think this one is worth watching. You know, I do. You know, sit down and get your mind off the other stuff, and then when we come back, we'll talk about it probably. You know, but and get back to this because this is very important here. This is going to be a treat. You know, some of the political theories and principles.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the fundamental rights. I mean, gee whiz, man. You know, he laid it out. It's about maybe 50 or so different things, you know, of African people, because it defines, in many respects, you know, there's certainly the religion, you know, and it's just the things that we do with each other, you know, but it kind of defines our blackness. Well, when we talk about being black or we talk about being African, these are some of the basic foundations of our blackness or our Africanness. And I personally would say to anybody, that's why I'm proud to be black. That's black privilege. You know, it's like you almost know this instinctively because, you know, the people that raised you up showed you some of this, you know, and it's instinctual. And I think it's spiritual.
Right on. I agree with you 100%. I do want to ask you if you have a business that you would like to recognize.
I drove. There's one that I do want to mention. In our last episode, I mentioned a young brother who is a computer person. I've been trying to think of which computer to take to him. You know,
right.
I think I want to give him the hardest one to work on.
Does he fix phones? Because I can use it.
I don't know. You know what? I will call him up tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll call and I'll leave a message. And if I can't leave a message, because I'm going to be in that area of town, I'm going to drop a little note under his door. You know.
Awesome.
And I'll ask him.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And so, listeners, let me tell you guys how awesome Mr. D is. Okay. I haven't spoken to Mr. D all week. I broke my phone. I have not been able to get my phone replaced or fixed since then. And I had no way of contacting Mr. D. I didn't know if he was going to assume that we were recording still or not. And honestly, I came to the studio today and I got everything set up and I waited and I was like, oh man, I'm going to have to record this episode by myself. And I promise you, I was just telling everybody, hey, I got to get ready. I'm going to go ahead and just go through with the episode. I came back here. I was getting ready to reach over and press play, and I heard a knock at the door.
Oh.
Mr. D. Oh, man, I love you. Thank you so much. You're awesome. And I can't promise you that if the shoe was on the other foot, I'd have shown up. So.
Yeah, and he did do that. I could see the joy on his face.
Oh my goodness.
I would say thank God, you know, because I came on faith. You know, I wasn't sure that he was going to be here because I thought, you know, I didn't know what to think, but I said, nah, he's such a trooper and, you know, always trying to, you know, do this thing because it's a project, but more than that, it's a love. And you can tell by the in-depthness that, you know, he brings to it. I mean, he's got pages and pages. I mean, he's gonna run all this stuff out. You know, I got little post-its in there, and I got little pencil marks on the you know the paragraph or the sentence or whatever. You know, I'll be highlighting them in colors later on. You know, but homeboy comes here, he's got it all laid out. You know, and he takes it that serious, and I'm glad he does because it's contagious. I again want you folks to be infected, you know, because this infection is the kind of virus of knowledge, which is like an inoculation against the ignorance.
Yes.
You know, I thank you, Lord, for that. You know, I just thought that, you know, but now that I've said it, it inoculates you against the lies, the deception, the falsehood, you know, that fake alternative fact BS. You know, it's like truth is truth because there's only one. It's truth. Simple. Not it's truth now, but it's not truth later and all that kind of stuff. See, that's man-made stuff. See, it's like the law is the law, like the law of gravity.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
The sun rises, the sun sets more times than you could possibly count. You know, if you had multiple lifetimes. It's been doing it for billions of years. Right. You know, see, that's truth. You see what I mean?
No, it's not. It's only 6,000 years old.
Oh, yeah, 6,000, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's the man-made civilization on the planet. You know, but nonetheless, we're looking at, you know, trying to, you know, spread the word, let more folks know what we're suggesting here. And we really, again, do welcome your input. And I think that was the driving force that brought me in. It appears like it was right on time.
Man.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Question. Do you remember the point that you asked me to not let you forget? You said you wanted to make a point about isolation.
I do. Okay. As many of you have heard me mention my granddaughter, you know, she's the love of my life for many reasons. My daughter is too. My daughters are. My family is. And just picture me being on a playground with a bunch of other people. Very few of them are black people.
Right. Santa Clarita, right?
Yeah, you know, but by me taking her out, there's been some level of acceptance, you know, that has gotten, for example, you know, the little 5-year-old girl with the blonde hair and the blue eyes, you know, would you push me, please? Yeah, sure, baby. And I look at the mother, you know, and she says, okay, you know, and I push the baby and she has a lot of fun, you know. And so they're beginning to see that I'm caring about the children,
right? You
know, to make the story short, many of these mothers are now talking to me, not so much as a stranger or as a man or as a, you know, grandpa.
The trusted opinion?
Yeah. And they're unloading, you know, on how they feel that this COVID thing is isolating their children and affecting their social development, you know. And I say, well, we're out here, you know, we doing this little thing right here, you know. The kids got to get out and play. They got to get some exercise. Their bodies demand it. Their mind demands it, you know. So we're trying to counter the isolation. And when that got brought to my attention, I have come to realize that even many adults are feeling the same way.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You know, if you are feeling that way, folks, you know, you got to reach out. You know, I think the African way of dealing with families is a good way to do it. But if that is not, shall I say, sufficient, then, you know, you can Google in mental health. Mm-hmm. You know, you can Google in, you know, counseling. You know, you can Google in mediation. And I dare say that in every city, I would even say in every town, there is somebody, you know, that will listen to you. You got to speak your feelings out to realize that you're not isolated, that you're not alone, you know, and from that you can gain strength. Universities, you know, have facilities for this. Nonprofit organizations have services for this. The counties all over the country got services this. And if you're a black person and feel that you need to talk with a black person, you can even find black counselors, black mediators, mm-hmm. black people that will listen, because they may understand your feeling a little bit better than somebody else. You would be surprised how many white people are sensitive enough to realize kind of what's going on, because they are human beings too. You know, those that are, you know, but you know, just to be fair and balanced, yeah. I know some black folks that won't listen to damn thing.
Crazy.
Yeah, they lost their minds already. You know,
I know black Trump supporters.
There you go. You know, there's a real good example of somebody that lost their mind. You know, so you know, you find someone who's going to be able to listen to you without judgment. You know, and as you build confidence in them. And they earn your trust, then I think that, you know, you may be able to find a way to get through this, because, you know, you got to have purpose. I think you got to have purpose in prayer. Amen. You know, and you know, give us a call. Well, not a call, but
email.
An email or a text.
Yeah, or you can hit me up online somewhere.
Okay, you know what I mean, and we'd be happy to you know, throw it out across the media that we're developing, and you know, we're hopeful that somebody else may. Oh yeah, I felt that way. Oh no, I remember how that used to be, but now I tried this. You know, and they'll give you a solution, you know, to that problem. We follow like what Dr. Chandler said. You know, we are an African people. We are a people.
One people.
Yeah. And our community, you know, needs to be healthy.
Couldn't agree more. All right. Well, on that, let's get ready to wrap it up. I do want to recognize a unit, a nonprofit called the Linwood Athletic Community Center. This is a nonprofit that was actually started by I'm gonna say this and it's gonna sound bad, but I'm gonna clarify in a second. This nonprofit was began by the security guard at my old high school.
What's wrong with that? Absolutely
nothing, because that security guard from my old high school also used to play third base for the Braves.
Ah, okay.
That's why it's called the Linwood Athletic Community Center, is because he's created a sports program, a nonprofit sports program for the youth.
Third base is you know, like, yeah. You know,
he ain't very fast, but he can hit.
Yeah.
Third and first, you ain't fast, but you can hit. So I just wanted to make a note of that. The Linwood Athletic Community Center. That's Coach James Bishop, who also coaches at Compton College, where they do the Dodgers thing.
Oh, good.
Yeah, he's good. One of the coaches for that. So if you have a kid who's in baseball at all, you might, or in California at least, you might want to look at the Linwood Athletic Community Center, or check out that the Dodgers have a program set up right there at Compton College, and it's free baseball training by professional coaches for youth. So check that out.
Can they call, or do they have to Google it online and get the email and send in an email or something?
I don't know what they're doing for COVID. It's probably shut down because of COVID. Yeah. But before COVID, it was just show up. Just anybody could randomly show up. They did sessions, I think, 3 or 4 times a week.
Good.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I also wanted to mention one more thing. I think I have another podcast coming around.
Mm-hmm.
I had some a follower of mine on TikTok reached out to me and said, "Hey, you and this other pretty popular TikTok should make a podcast, because you guys both put out, pretty decent information and whatnot." And so I reached out to the other podcaster and said, "Hey, this mutual follower of ours thought that we should do this," and he said, "That sounds great."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Oh, okay, well, let's try and put that together." So there's another. I might be a little bit more busy coming up in the near future.
Bring it on.
Yep.
Yeah.
So having said that, this is the only podcast I have right now. This is the Black Man's Book Club, and I want to thank all of you.
Like one is not enough, you know.
Too much work as it is.
Yeah.
It might be biting off.
That's the dedication that you put in.
We'll find out. So, like I said, this is the Black Man's Book Club. We are about to sign out. But before I do sign out, I want to let you know that you are the most important part of this show. We do this for you. We do this because of you. We want to thank you. If you want to reach us, you can reach us at Creating Black Readers on Instagram. We are at Uncommon Sense, or you can find us at Black Man's Book Club on TikTok. You can also reach out to us at creatingblackreaders@gmail.com. Once again, that is creatingblackreaders@gmail.com. Drop us an email.
And for contacting Mr. D, just put Mr. D C, that's capital C, / capital O. That's uppercase C / uppercase O, which stands for care of. You see? And then I'll get the message.
Right on, right on.
Yeah, I still got to get my technical thing together. And that is coming to, it's evolving the way it's supposed to.
No biggie.
It's good. It's good. No, it is. There's movement, for several different reasons.
Right on.
But in the meantime, where there's a will, there's a way.
Yes.
So Mr. D, care of all that contact information that Uncommon just gave you, and send us some stuff. We'll try our best to include it in our next broadcast.
Also, not this Thursday because I broke my phone, but from now on, Thursdays at 6 Pacific time, I'll be doing lives. So come join me on there, and we're going to get into doing some Zoom meetings here pretty quick too. Yeah. So once we get into the Zoom meetings, I'll start announcing that on here. But we're going to put this together a book club.
Yeah.
So having said that, I am Uncommon Sense. This is the Black Man's Book Club. That's Mr. D, and you are awesome.
Peace.
Just take a look at that child in her eye. He's enough to drive a poor guy wild in her eye. Take him in, check him out, I'm gonna. She's gonna love him. She's gonna love him. I'm gonna Scooby-Dooby-Doop all night. Go on and love him, gal. Go on and love him, gal. I'm gonna try-la-la till the sun